Hey, yeah, the day is here. And thank you everyone and welcome to the very first Technovelle Roundtable. My name is Rihanna and I am so happy to have all of you here as we start today's discussion. So if you are joining for the first time and if you are just getting to know Technovelle for the first time, at Technovelle, we believe that technology should empower and not overwhelm. And that is exactly why we created this space to break down the complexity of like AI, cybersecurity, and also data analytics across different industries. So we are looking at different industries and we are providing actionable insights that can help professionals like you make informed decisions with confidence. So for today we have like quite a number of like agenda things to go on, and our goal for today is like quite simple, and we want you to have like a better understanding of how AI is shaping healthcare, what challenges still exist, how we as professionals, as business leaders, as decision makers can prepare for what is next. So here on the agenda, we will be getting to know each other. So please drop it in the comment section where you are joining from, your name, what you do. And we'll also be talking a little bit about Technovelle, what we do, who we are, and how you can also join our communities. And there will also be a section for us to introduce the brains behind this discussion and also introduce our guest speaker. So there is no way we'll do this roundtable without introducing Technovelle, especially for those that are just getting to know Technovelle. And Technovelle is not just like every other like discussion platforms. We are a global community. We are bringing together tech professionals, business leaders, and also industry experts to help us decode the emerging trends, help us share knowledge, and also stay ahead of industry like trends. We know how overwhelming it can be. We know how fast-paced technology is. So through our roundtables like the one we are doing today, our daily tech digests, our monthly reports, we are aiming to turn insights into like impact. We want you to be able to like take actionable steps and be like a step further in your career as well. So to talk about our mission, we know that we believe that technology should empower and not intimidate. And that is why our mission is simple. We want to create a space where knowledge is accessible, where technology is accessible, where insights are accessible, rather and also helping to filter out any other noise in the fast-paced environment. We know how the industry is moving so fast and everything going on with AI, how confused people can get. And that is exactly one of our missions, right? We are bringing in experts every month to talk about and also dissect all the strengths. And thank you so much, like, for joining us to embark on this mission as well. So we have a couple of Technovelle activities. We have a lot of things happening beyond just monthly roundtables. Just like today's event, we bring in one of the industry leaders in the technology space to discuss how AI is helping to empower the healthcare industry. And also beyond the roundtables, we have the daily tech trends and digests that we have across all of our social media platforms. We post every day about what is trending today and how we can actually take actionable insights for the future. So if you haven't followed us, I will be sharing our community with us for us to join. And beyond just the daily tech trends digest, our tech predictive reports also help us to take real insights. So we put together all these trends every month and share the reports with like the tech communities, with business leaders that can help them make better decisions in whatever activities they want to do. And lastly is Technovelle community. We have a global network of like tech professionals across different social platforms. So it would be great to have you join us. And this is our community handle for those that are yet to join. Our LinkedIn is like at Technovelle. We also have our Instagram handle, our YouTube, which will be launching soon. So please help us to subscribe. And our Facebook and every other platforms are active. And we'll be launching our newsletter, which is our Substack at Official Technovelle, and our YouTube at Technovelle in the next coming days. So please do, and feel free to help us to subscribe to our communities. And on the last part, before we go into the discussion for today, I want to quickly have a shout out to the brilliant minds behind Technovelle. And along with myself, I have Victoria Ogunsoya and Dorcas, and they are so passionate about making technology conversations more accessible. So thank you so much for like bringing this to life. And we hope that you're going to like enjoy every conversation that we'll be having today. And lastly, on this slide is our guests, right? Let's give a warm welcome to our esteemed guests. We have Adeoluwa Ogunye. Adeoluwa Ogunye is a senior software engineer with over 10 years of experience. So he has experience across backend infrastructure, AI, and ML. And he's also the co-founder of MyItera. MyItera is a health tech startup that is focused on innovative healthcare solutions. So we are so excited to have a thought leader and experts with us today to discuss what is really happening in the healthcare industry and how we can see how AI, artificial intelligence, is shaping the future of today and the future of healthcare. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We'll be going straight into the discussion now. So give me a minute to just stop sharing. Yeah, welcome, Adeoluwa. Thank you so much for joining us today. Like, it's my pleasure to have you here. And
thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to like the great conversation we'll be having today. Just to like lead or make the chat section so interactive. I know we have people joining from different places and please do ensure that you introduce yourself. It will be so nice to like know where you are joining from. Let's know what you do. And it's part of the discussion that we want to have today. Beyond just learning, we also like want to network in any little way that we can. And so, Adeoluwa, there has been like the old buzzing around like AI in all industry. And AI in healthcare is, I would say, is one of those topics that can feel both exciting and overwhelming at the same time. And of recent, I was reading this Deloitte report on healthcare for 2025, and it's really an interesting thing, right? It's got me thinking about how much things are actually changing in healthcare. So from where you stand, how do you see AI shaping healthcare in, say, let's say the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, with regards to AI and healthcare, especially in the next 5 to 10 years, if you've been following AI, you would have noticed, especially the trends of generative AI, and LLMs, and how quickly and faster these models are being released.
Mm.
You'd come to discover that we basically have to even keep up with the information before we can even say we're keeping up with the technology. So, with regards to transformation, where it may be, I would say the very first one would most likely be personalized medicine, right? So, a lot of personalization going into how you're treated, right? What type of information is being presented to you as a patient. Um, Sometimes you even have to start thinking about prognosis, right? So how do I preempt or predict what may happen to you pretty soon or in the near future? So then you start thinking and talking about genetics, how they can then personalize this genetics and genome information to you yourself. There's early diagnostics as well. So how early do we get to detect these diseases, cancers, right? Applications in cancer, predicting your health, your heart condition, right? And the likes. Then you have the likes of in terms of healthcare operations now. So how do things like administrative tasks that we do day to day, say in the hospitals. How do these help? How do AI basically help to improve efficiencies in these operations, right? And generally, too, you also think of cost reduction, right? How do you streamline costs? How do you ensure profitability in healthcare, especially when you're running it as a business? And the like. So those are the kind of places I'm seeing in the next 5 to 10 years, right? We've done researches now. The next thing is how do we get technically saying money or how to basically the applications of all of this in healthcare.
Okay, that sounds really like interesting, like because the part where you talked about like diagnosis, efficiency, and I feel even in the report, there one of the things that they also talked about is like 70% of these healthcare executives talk about how AI can actually help them improve efficiency. Like it's a top priority for them. And looking at these different areas, they all overlap, right? So AI isn't just affecting like one part of healthcare. It's sort of like weaving itself into like everything. So for business leaders or let's say decision makers in both the technology and the healthcare industry, considering that we really want to like invest in AI healthcare solutions, what should they be thinking about before making that leap? Like what are the sort of like thoughts process or things that should come to their mind? Because I mean, AI is broad. Like you said, there are different areas, right? And before we could say we want to invest into something, what are the things, the questions that should be answered before we really like invest in that AI solution?
Interestingly, I think at the moment, I would stop thinking like as an engineer. I would think more like a business person now. So, I think the very first one, and I'm going to make a case of governments and especially African governments or Nigeria as an example. I think the very first thing they would really want to consider, right, is regulations, and this applies in Europe. It applies in America as well. So, what are the regulations that guides that particular business, right? EPA, GDPR, could it be consumer protection? What sort of data policy? Because when we talk of AI, we are talking of data, vast amounts of data. How do you ingest? How do you process? How do you use? And how do you expunge as well? Because you have cases and scenarios where people no longer want their data there. So how do you expunge from that pool of information? And I think the other one also would be so all of this is still based on the technology, right? The other one would then be the effectiveness, right? What type of problem is being solved, right? Is there sort of like scalability, right? Are you able to measure the impact that this particular solution does, right? Then you have ethical implications, right? So, I mean, you wouldn't want to invest in an AI that kills people, right? Because that definitely backfires. So, what are the biases that may arise? Do what you're investing in, do that end up discriminating with people? The others is, and I think another thing would be applications, right? So, this particular business, the solution they offer, what are the sorts of integrations that could come out of it, right? Does it make use of legacy systems? Is it backward compatible with old data forms and formats? Can you integrate with other people and provide new forms of data? Right. And I think the last one would just be return on investments, really, as a business person. Is there a return on investment? For me, is it scalable? Can I sort of take this application from Africa and use it in Europe? Can I take it from Europe and use it in South America, for example? So I think as a business leader, investor, you want to invest in healthcare, those are the kind of things you should think about too.
Great. Thank you. You really like give a lot of points, and I'll be picking those points like one after the other. So the one of the things that you talked about that really like stand out to me, well, you talked about like people, you talked about ethics, right? But even if like AI is working well, there are still big ethical concerns. And one of the biggest is bias. So if AI is trained on incomplete or let's say unbalanced data, it could sort of like lead to, I mean, it could lead to misdiagnosis, or let's say sometimes unequal treatment, if I might say. So what do you see as the biggest challenges or the biggest ethical challenges that we need to watch out for as AI gets deeper into healthcare?
I think when it comes to ethics, it's broad, right? That's one. It's broad and it's subjective. That's the other, right? Um, so I think the biggest would be responsibility or accountability. That's the first one. For me, right? So when something goes wrong, if there are errors, who takes the responsibility for it? Who is responsible? And you get to see this quite evident in a lot of things. I mean, you want to use an AI on a platform, there's already a disclaimer or a policy saying if something goes wrong, you're the one responsible as the user. They are not responsible for how you interpret or use the information that's been given by the AI. Um, so around that, then I think the next one would be consent. Managing consent is a bit hard when it comes to AI. I mean, I can give you consent to use my information right now, but when I remove consent for you to use my data, right? How do you remove that from the model that has been trained? Right? So how do we tell the model, please forget everything you know about person XYZ? And I think it becomes harder. That's when you're talking of generative models. But when you're not looking at generative models, that you're being looking at the identified data or the identified information, then you start getting to the areas whereby, okay, you've de-identified my data, right? But it's still my data. How do I know that's my data? So things like that. Then the final, sorry, not the final, but how do you make patients know what their data that you collected is being used for? That's another one, right? So do you tell them, if you tell them along the line, do you update them what it has been used for? What if they don't consent to that? So how do you do things like that? Then I'll go back to the conversation you mentioned about bias and fairness. And I think that's where it's more challenging. And I'll use good examples. I mean, Europeans, Americans, they've been collecting data for as long as possible. But in Africa, we are just coming to the realization of that. So you find out that there's more data about Europe, Americas, the UK, but very little about Africans, right? So how do you represent that information, right? So then there are biases, there are misinformations as well. So how do you, because when you train a model, you end up perpetuating these biases across, right? Then how do you account for the non-representative data, right, of these sets? For example, Temi is a good example. There are more so this is sorry, I'm pulling this out of thin air. So I won't say it's backed by any data, just to put it out there. So you would have more people with eyesight than people without eyesight, right? So if you were to work on a data like that, there will be bias definitely, right? Or your model is being trained in America, then the laws that govern that is laws that govern America, basically, right? So when you go to Europe or it's being used by someone in the Europe, then definitely the data sets and the information you'll be getting will be more of American. So how do you do that? Then I think the final one is just the balance, right? So like GPT, the architecture of GPT basically helps you to predict the next word and patterns and the likes. But you tend to have a case of hallucinations, right? I mean, over the course of last year, you find a lot of reports about ChatGPT basically churning out on facts, well, data that are not factual, right? Generates references that are not based, and these things occur, right? I mean, so typically these hallucinations are more of when your model, right, producing correct fabricated informations, basically not grounded by any of its training data sets. And typically this is just because it's meant to predict the next word, whether it makes meaning or not, right? So how do you end up balancing all of those? So I think those are the biggest concerns really, and it's broad, like there's a whole lot really.
Yeah, and the part of the data privacy, I would say for a person, I mean, we just want to use, even beyond health, we just want to use the software, right? We don't even know how they use our data, or we are not paying attention to how do they use our data? What are the things that they're actually getting from us? What are the type of data that they are storing on the system? And I want to throw this to our attendees. Like, what are your thoughts? You can just put it in the comment section. And what are your thoughts on how AI is handling patient data? Like, does it make you feel safer if you see yourself as a patient? Like, does it make you feel safer, and does it raise like privacy concerns? If you are told that AI is being and like AI is handling your data, let me say that. So, and on the part of like AI and data privacy, Adelua, I have like one question, right? AI, you said AI runs on data, and healthcare data is some of like the most sensitive information out there, if I must say. And how can healthcare organizations make sure that their AI-driven systems are secure and patient data is protected? Because I know that there are a lot of like regulations, fines, being guided by like all these healthcare organizations. So how can AI healthcare organizations make sure that these systems are secure?
So I guess the interesting part there would be the word data governance,
Okay.
right? So with regards to healthcare organizations, you would find that a lot of people are using AI right now, right? But how many people or how many organizations are really investing into data governance, right? So that's one of the problematic areas I see. And when you talk of data governance, you talk of things like compliance, right? So how you comply with existing laws, both new and the old ones. I mean, these laws are always updated, or new ones come into play. So when you have organization adhering to data governance principles and compliance, you tend to curb a lot of those privacy concerns. But then again, it's just to be able to dig um, or dive deeper, right? You have the likes of encryption, right? So in the tech world, it's advised whenever you're heavily concerned about security, you just have to encrypt your data, right? Whether it's in transit or you're storing it, you just have to make sure you encrypt. And that's one principle when you're concerned about that. Then the second one I would say is controls, right? Because of breaches, bad actors, and what you have not, you have to be very concerned about breaches. And to be able to do that, you have to start putting access controls, right? You limit those who have access to those data before they are actually being used, right? So when it's being trained, before it's being trained, when it's being processed, when you're ingesting it, limit those who have access. That's the beginning first. When you limit that, then you can always reduce the exposure to those risks. Then I would say audits. Auditing is important. I mean, some people have to do it yearly. So you just have to do it, check your security, check for vulnerabilities, ensure your end-to-end and your pipeline basically is foolproof. Then lastly will be consent. Um, Privacy is a tricky word in AI. And I would say it's tricky because depending on the type of care you want to provide, you need vast amounts of data, right? But to be able to actually get that precise delivery. So being able to ensure transparency in those communications to the patient, I think is very, very important. I mean, you have to tell the patients what you're using their data for. Explicit consent. I mean, it doesn't have to be ambiguous. And I'm saying this because when you read most of these policy documents, you get bored because sorry to say they are being written by lawyers, right? You get bored of it. It's not even clear, right? You see it seems like this meaning who, she, he, her. And that's basically the beginning of the ambiguity. You're down to paragraphs and you're like, you know what? I accept, right? And you don't know what your data is for and all. But when it's not explicitly communicated, it's unambiguous. Um, and people don't understand it, then you start raising issues of privacy and security. Then I think investment in security is also very important, right? I mean, the same way we are talking about governance, updating of policies, GDPRs, and different organization and countries improving on these policies. When you start having things like that, you also have bad actors improving on themselves to actually do that. Then finally, on your front end or well, let me call it front end. Recently, you would have people complaining about bots coming to scrape their sites and all. So you just have to be very, very careful that you're not exposing your data out there, right? For these bots, you have to also do things like preventing EATs, right? DDoS attack is another one. So lots and lots of those around data privacy and security that businesses and healthcare organizations need to be really concerned about.
I love how you actually like talked about like the policies itself. Yeah, policies are boring. Even myself, anytime I just try to read some, I'll be like, oh my God, I really cannot go further. And there are just like a couple of things like that came to my mind, right? We have like AI, we have AI serving as like innovation, helping us to like optimize things, supporting, helping with efficiency. And at the other end, we have like regulations, and we know that we have like different regulations. So from your own point of view, would you say that the current regulations are keeping up with like the AI innovation, especially like in the healthcare space, or they are slowing down the progress? Because we know how regulations can be. And being a business person and also a tech professional, oh yeah, we want to push this out. We want our solutions to be the next big thing in the AI space in healthcare, but we also have regulations that are sort of like drawing us down. So would you say like the regulations are keeping up with the AI, like the current innovation, or they are slowing things down?
Um, well, that's also subjective, right? So as a customer, as a consumer, um, you would want the best regulation to actually serve you. As a business and someone who wants to make profits, you're thinking that you need to get this product out there as quickly as possible, try and iterate as fast as possible, deliver these solutions as good as possible so you can and make money, right? As the government, you're also wondering, you want to actually balance both your consumer and the business, right? I mean, the business end up paying taxes, but then you have the people, and most governments now is practically the voice of the people where you have the democracy. And I would say this is interesting because so my Tura was part of a research by University of Nottingham here in the UK. And so the whole research is about responsible AI, and a conversation like this came up, right? And interestingly, when you look at a lot of newspapers, publications, you start to see concerns, right? Why all these regulations are meant to be there. Take, for example, data breaches. So IBM did a security report where they said on an average, data breach in the UK per year is about 4.3 million, right, pounds. And interestingly, that's actually just fines, basically. And also, well, fines and costs, basically. Because in GDPR, once you accused of a breach or you have that breach and it's proven, you have to pay a fine, right? While also incurring all that business costs and issues along the line. But then again, you have poor data quality as well, right? So the data you get, especially in healthcare, right? So you gather poor data, you train your AI on this poor data. It affects um, continuity care, it affects patient outcomes and treatment outcomes down the line, right? And you start to see case and needs for these regulations, right? So in a way, they should slow it down, but when you do the right thing, it becomes a catalyst, right? Regulations are are majorly there to protect the people. And I would make a case of, so I have a background in basically automation and robotics, and there's this law of robotics basically that's been adhered and basically guided by everyone
Mhm.
that builds a robot. And there's a very first law: your robot must not harm anybody. That's the basics of it. So if we start to put guidelines and things like that with AI, then you start having the questions being answered of, are they actually slowing down or are they helping us? So I want to believe, regardless of how fast we move in innovation when it comes to AI and healthcare in general, there's still going to be regulations to catch up because we have to protect ourselves as humans. We have to protect ourselves from false informations. We have to protect ourselves from data breach. We have to protect ourselves from biases. We have to protect ourselves from hallucinations, right? So and ethical concerns as well, right? So what is good for the geese is it also good for the for the gander, right? If I treat a pig, for example, on this data, would that same data be able to treat a dog, right? So things like that. So for example, I can make a case for, so this is an example out of thin air too. If I train my data with European, so this is healthcare. I train my model and my AI on European data, right? Bringing that to Africa, what are the rules and guidelines that should cover that? Would treatments that work in Europe, would those same treatment work in Africa, right? And the biases and the likes. So yeah, it slows it down, but innovation has to catch up,
Yeah.
basically.
Right. And with people or business leaders looking at scaling their products, like, oh yeah, we want it to be a global product. I think for healthcare, it's a different ball game because regulations are different. And the kind of data, I know that Europe is so big on data, like our data protection. So with all these countries or all these continents having different regulations, having to scale your product in terms of regulations, which data are we storing, which data are we collecting is also like very important. And if you are just joining or you just joined, please introduce yourself, where you are joining from, ask questions in the chat section. We are going to address that towards the end of the conversation. And I have these, should I say, big question, and around bridging the gap between healthcare professionals and the AI engineers. We know that for AI solutions to work effectively, there should be collaboration, not just with the healthcare, but also collaborate with like other people in the tech space, not only in the tech, I just to say general collaborations. And how do we actually make sure that these collaborations are effective? What are the kind of strategies that can be put in place to ensure that healthcare professionals, tech professionals, or every other people, researchers, people involved in building AI solutions collaborate effectively and also build like a unified solution, not just for themselves, but for these people, for the patients that they are building things for?
When it comes to bridging gaps in healthcare, especially when it comes to technology and healthcare profession,
Mm.
I personally, right, think healthcare professionals, when you're trying to build a product that has to do with tech, I personally believe that they should be part of the tech team, right? So, typically in an organization, a tech organization, you want to create a product, you have your product manager, you have the engineers, you have the stakeholders, possibly the clients or the business. You have your front end, you may have your back end, or if they are full stack, you may have your mobile as well. You have your Q&A, the testers. You may have security and controls, ensuring compliance, the compliance team. What I believe is when it comes to healthcare, you should also have the healthcare team part of the product themselves. And this is not only because of the advice, right? They could also be part of the Q&A. That's one, right? So ensuring the right results are given or the right prediction or classifications are given, vetting these processes. So you can put them as Q&A. You can also have them as the product owners, right? So being able to design and validate that the criteria are met or and to be accepted. That's one. So you must make sure that those teams are very, very interdisciplinary. Clinicians, data scientists, they all have to be together. Engineers as well, they have to be in the loop too. to do that. Then the other one will be clear channels of communication, right? So communication is very, very, very important, and it has to be unambiguous, right? I mean, you have people from different fields and different disciplines, right? What constitutes a solution to you as an engineer may not exactly constitute a solution, right, to a doctor, right, or a clinician, right? And it becomes more challenging down the line when you guys don't speak the same language, right? So what is acceptable to you? What is acceptable to you? What are the tolerances you have, right? For example, we are trying to build a robot that performs surgical operations, right? Um, you have to actually give those tolerance, those values, right? It has to be tested. What do you test it on? As an engineer, you won't go directly to test it on humans. Meanwhile, in the medical space, they actually have basically how they do clinical trials and all, right?
Right.
So, and just to be able to validate the ethics. And I believe along the line, before all of these products or these products are released, they actually have to be signed off, right? So it has to be signed off as safe, right? Every doctor has sworn to, or every healthcare professional, let me put it that way, has sworn to protect lives, right? And as much as possible, give value and balance where there needs to be. Engineers as well have sworn to do that, right? So that balance and that sign off has to be there, right? So as an engineer, you don't just dish off. I mean, that's one. Then the last one is actually centric designs or um, centric solutions, right? So if your solution is targeted at customers, then it has to be validated and tested, and you have to make sure it's very, very much centered to the customers, right? Those biases are not there at the detriment of the customers. If they are sent, if those designs or your solution is tailored towards a clinician, right? I'll make a case of Mytura that's providing like digital tools for healthcare providers, right? So in a case like that, we have to make sure we bring those healthcare providers in,
Right.
right? Validate it, test it, right? Make sure it solves your problem. Sign off on it that you're good before
Yeah.
it then goes to market for you or for others. So things like that I just see where like there are basically gaps that needs to be filled
Right.
in all teams.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really like valid because the most times or anytime I see people build healthcare solutions and I just get to be in conversation, I don't see where they talk about, oh yeah, we have like healthcare professionals, experts, healthcare professionals that ensure that solutions are like up to par and up to standards. And yeah, they're just like being left behind and maybe being seen as an afterthought, but yeah, they're supposed to be embedded in the discussion at the beginning. So that collaboration and I would say the insight that you gave are really noteworthy. And to talk about, we've talked about data privacy, we've talked about challenges, we've talked about data problems altogether. But as we have the challenges, we also have new opportunities that AI is also creating, not just only for patients, but let's look at it from like professionals right now, like professionals that are either working in healthcare or they are interested in working in healthcare. What do you see as the biggest opportunities AI is creating for healthcare professionals, not only healthcare professionals, but tech professionals or professionals in general that are interested in working in the healthcare industry?
Well, regarding healthcare, professionals, businesses especially, because I want to put the professionals and the business in a bucket, forgive me. And the reason why is because the reason why they're employed basically is to foster business growth, improve or expand whatever business processes they have. So for professionals and businesses, I think faster turnaround times will be the easiest case, right? And I'm saying this because of what's or the advancements that are currently there right now. So it reduces this administrative burden of, we are humans, we take time to do our things if we want to ensure there are no errors. Then you have validations along the way whereby you review, right, without making instant decisions and all. So I think that's one, faster turnaround time, and it helps to reduce this administrative burden. Another thing I would say would be it provides an opportunity for um, improving the knowledge you have, right? So there's limits to the capacity of our minds as human. Even if there are no limits, it hasn't been explored yet, one. And second is fatigue, right? So there's a limit to how much, or well, there's a limit to how much you can remember, so how much you can also take in to assimilate. So it actually offers this way to upskill ourselves, right? So I mean, you can quickly query your. I'm using generative model, the LLMs now as an example, ChatGPT, Claude, and the likes. So it basically offers you the opportunity to tap into a knowledge base and get information as quickly as possible. So upskilling will be another thing. For business, I would say new revenues, new areas of making revenues, the type of products you deliver, the type of services you deliver down the line, for each consumer becomes different. Personalization is another one. You have things like wearables that you can improve the type of solution and value you give to the customer. I'll make a case for Whoop. Now, so in the UK, Whoop is, I don't want to say it's an alternative to Apple wristwatch, but it doesn't have an interface where it collects as much data for you as possible. No interface at all. All you just end up having is just reports on on the app that tells you how you're performing, your sleep, your fatigue rate, and the likes. Then cost savings for businesses. And I'm trying not to sound I'm trying not to offend we as users or we as clinicians, but it's the truth. Businesses would want to save cost, and part of this cost would mean using as little people as possible to solve a solution. I made an example of validation or reviewing. You could save some time in those review processes, right? Um, Remote healthcare is another one, right? So remote healthcare helps you to limit the amount of people or the numbers of people visiting the hospitals so that you don't have bottlenecks, you don't have that crowd. Then the final one would be outcomes, right? So previously, and I would use cancer research um, and genome treatment or genetics and all as an example. So previously, um, doing targeted treatments was a challenge, right? So, but now I can take a copy of your DNA, test it out with a drug to see if there's an improvement. If there's an improvement, I use that for you. If there's none, then I have to find other treatments. Compared to previous times whereby you have to go through trials and basically you're waiting in line for when it's your turn. You may try the drug and it doesn't work for you, and then you have to start all over again. So for businesses, for people, it helps improve that process, improves the efficiency, improve the delivery and the outcome, provides better upskilling as well. Then the last one is just accuracy, right? And accuracy may be subjective. And I'm saying that from the point of, as a clinician, what you call good outcome may be different from that of a user, right? You may be very positive and optimistic saying, oh, it was able to reduce it, but for the user, it didn't treat it. But then again, that's how medicines work, right? So it's over time, knowledge improves, drug delivery improves, and all of this just fits into just help both business and clinicians themselves as a profession to improve that.
Wow, that's so like that's so huge because I mean, for I know that like you mentioned, we have to like keep training the data to ensure that there is accuracy and all. And the final question that I have before I start looking at the questions that we have here is that I know you made mention of upskilling. And what are the notable skills that you would suggest that would help, let's say, healthcare professionals that want to start looking at AI or tech professionals that want to work in healthcare? What are that key skills I feel like it's an huge important one to have before you can say, oh yeah, I'm interested in working in this industry, just on a surface level?
So with that, I think it depends on persons to persons, right? then it depends on where you're starting from. So it still fits into persons to persons. For someone who has not had a good experience or feel of technology, then you should be starting from what is technology, right? For you who has had a feel, then you should be more like this is what is next in technology. So I think the very first skill is an interpersonal skill, right? And that's adaptability, right? Or receptability. How do you receive new knowledge? That's the first one. Right now, you have a lot of clinicians being skeptical, right? So skeptical, like this is here to replace my job. Skepticism, like this is not going to do a good job as much as I can. Other skepticism, like oh, I'm being here used to train something to, or used to train a solution that's replacing my job.
Right.
So I think being open-minded is one, and also knowledge. So in the part of knowledge, you have to actually look back to look at how things had improved, right? We discovered fire, we discovered wheels, we discovered the steam engine, we discovered electricity, right? We discovered electromagnetism, we discovered mobile phones and telephony, um, computers as well, right?
Right.
At some point in time, we are going to have to discover intelligence, right? So, what are the capabilities that this intelligence will do is another. And interestingly, um, the vision of data is also another thing. That's why I said it's very subjective for clinicians, and it heavily depends on their background. Um, so with regards to a high for data, right? So you're working on vast amounts of data every day as a clinician, from patient information to drug history, to the patient's history themselves, to treatment histories, right? If you have a high for data, then you're probably saying, where can this be improved, right?
Right.
Then another thing I would say, which is also very hard and subjective as well to all humans individually, is what do you call it? This ability to think of solutions, right? It's very, I don't want to say it's very hard, but how do you conceptualize solutions? And this comes from the idea of, can I outsource what I do? Right? How do I prevent myself from doing a dull and monotonous work? Right? So every day, let me use this example. Every day you're working, so you're working as a clinician at the hospital. Every day someone walks to up to your desk and say, I want to see a doctor, right? And the first thing you do is, what is your name? You put it there. Then the next thing, what's wrong with you? You put it there. What else again? I need to collect your blood, or basically I need to collect your vitals. Then you say, oh, can you put this thermometer under your armpit, or can I use the thermometer gun to measure your temperature? You do that and you say, can I monitor your blood pressure? Well, I'm from a school of thought that all of those can be done from home before the patient gets to the hospital, right? So just to be able to streamline that process, if you can do all of those vitals, and all of those vitals are not, let me say, they are not critical, right? So your temperature is not very high. Your high blood pressure, I'm sorry, your blood pressure is not high,
Yeah.
right? By the time you get to the hospital, we should be able to decide how quickly we should attend to you. That's one. We should also be able to decide, should you actually be coming to the hospital in the first place, to come and take 20 minutes to 30 minutes of this nurse's time, right? A typical shift is 8 hours, right? And within these 8 hours, we can split it into 16, for example, meaning we're saying for every encounter, it's 30 minutes, meaning a typical person at the front desk, using 30 minutes to view a patient would only be able to see 16 patients in a day, right? If you're in a general hospital, that numbers don't tally, right? So these are the kind of thoughts I think everybody should be thinking. And I'm going to say very personal information, or maybe bias or recommendation to clinicians out there is, you need to actually watch more tech movies, right? And it gets to a solution whereby if you don't keep up, you get left out, right?
Right.
And there's this robot. Well, the name of the robot is Baymax. The movie is Big Hero 6. And basically, the robot Baymax can diagnose and trace the person. That is the place we are going to. If you don't keep up, you'll be left out. The business will make their decision. If the business don't make their decision, people that are very future thinking, I'm going to use an example, Elon Musk, um, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and a lot of let me say AI corporate individuals out there
Yes.
would move on, and you'll be left out. Right now, Africa does not want to live. Basically, every country, and not just Africa, really, everybody does not want to be left out. If you don't keep up, you'll be dropped out. And sorry to just close my statement, I think that's just the evolution of mankind, right? You have generations upon generations dropping the weaker links out there. So keep up, or you'll be dropped out.
Oh
So
yeah.
I guess
That
that's just
is
it.
so powerful. Like keep up or you will drop. I feel like that's one thing that to me personally, I also need to like take away after everything that we've talked about. And thank you so much, Adelua. You've talked about a lot of things. And we have some questions. I could see some questions there in the chat. And one of the question is really directly to say, what kind of data do they, I mean, what these people mean by do they is do all these AI companies or healthcare companies using AI collect from us as individuals?
Mhm. So to I want to sound factual and I want to sound very future driven.
Yeah.
And that is to say they collect all datas, all from, well, depends on what type of grants or permissions you give, from
Mm-hmm.
your browsing history to your purchase history. I'm not saying all companies do this, but that's why I mentioned I want to be future driven as well. Down to the last place you visited. Like you went to the mall today, tomorrow you reported at the hospital. So what exactly is the cause? Is it the lights at the mall that you're reacting to? Is it just maybe your mode of transportation that is impacting your health? And down to everyday data you provide at the hospital, your name, your age. Then you have cases of encounters where the doctor is asking you, what did you eat yesterday? So
Right.
those are basically details, right? Then you have things like allergies, right? So what are you allergic to? What are your allergens? What are you reacting to? That's another thing that you would have provided. I mean, you went to the shop yesterday or to a restaurant yesterday, and you're telling them that they should avoid nuts, right? Um, all the food you've been buying, you've been avoiding pineapples, as an example. So all data, everything about you is data, right? Down to how long you spend browsing or using your phone. How often you pick up your phone is another one. I mean, we can be able to tell your attention span. Um, you go
That's,
down to a site. What'd you say?
I said, that is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you visit a site now and immediately you scroll down to the bottom. It's an attention issue, right? It could be a syndrome down the line. I mean, we all battle with different psychological things. And also, it also goes down to even how you enter your search, right? On the bar. You find someone constructing full sentences while trying to search. Like, let me use an example. Um, how to stop babies from crying, right? That's a full text sentence. And you have someone comes and it says, baby crying, stop, right? So it starts coming into what your psychs are in the first place. And you also have things like sports as well. So I mentioned Whoop, for example. I mean, we're already collecting, I'm using this as a case of speaking from a data perspective in healthcare. We're already collecting data about your performance during the day, how active you are, what your sleep patterns are, right? What your heart rate is saying. Um, and I can be able to say, oh, if you keep having your heart rate at maybe 70, 120, for the next 20 years, okay, 20 years is too far, for the next 2 years, then your risk of having a heart disease, right, is going to drop. Right, I'm already making those informations, right? The other is you want to buy. So I'm making very, very flimsy cases that are real. You want to buy a screen guard, right? Typically, you will just buy any screen guard out there, right? But now you're having people say, "Oh, you know what? I want the one with privacy screen," because there's a bias that, oh, you can't use your phone in bright lights. You have a lot of us rarely even put our phones on bright lights, right? They put it in the list. You're
Yes.
already trying to cure your, you're already trying to prevent some high issues for yourself. The other one is noise. How are you impacting? How are you how are you relating to noise? You're using an iPhone, any phone, Android phone, bulk of the time your phone is on silent. I'm already beginning to see that this person doesn't like noise, right? It's also an health information. On the iPhone and iWatch, it can actually start predicting when you're in a noisy environment. The real truth is right now, how would I know it's not actually capturing my background noise? And when I'm in a place that is noisier than when I've been used to, it should be able to tell me, yo, you're in a very noisy environment. Move
Yeah.
away from there.
Yeah.
So practically whole data is data. All data is data.
Wow. I mean, what you just said right now is just making me imagine. I don't know. I'm actually giving up so much information as that. And thank you. And I see someone ask question around, are there any health technology products currently operating with AI use cases that you can recommend in Nigeria? The person is talking about Nigeria. Like, are there any health technology products currently operating with AI use cases that you can recommend?
Uh, yes, and this may sound biased, but forgive me for my bias. I think one that I would recommend would be Maitura. Though I'm a co-founder, that's why I said it might sound biased. And the reason why is because while we are trying to provide, that's at Maitura, while we are trying to provide solutions to healthcare providers, and this is for businesses, you also have the value that's been targeted and delivered to other users, right? I mean, customers and consumers, from transcribing your consultation with a doctor, also offering you value down the line with regards to recommendations. You also have this interpretation of your healthcare data, which is being done. Then finally, records, right? So your record, while being made available to you, you can be able to transfer that to several other doctors. That's one.
Right.
Um, there are others. I mean, there's another organization. I'm trying to remember their name now. So they're really playing in the space of helping clinicians to transcribe, right? So this has to do with both transcription and also delivering a personalized doctor's notes, right? And this would help doctors a whole lot. I mean, when they're having conversations with a patient, they don't need to start typing.
Yeah.
That's another. There's another one. But I think they are still in the early stages. They're also trying to provide similar, but this time around, it's regarding conversations, right? So they're trying to help a user. So when you get to the hospital, you're there trying to converse with the AI to be able to get information. So forgive my knowledge, there are a lot of people solving problems, but you mentioned AI. Those are the ones that really come up my mind now.
Thank you so much. And because of time, I know that we have like few other questions here, but like I said, we will try as much as possible to maybe like address that in our coming daily tech digest. So if you haven't followed Technovelle on our social media platforms, we have it in the comment section. Please do well to follow. And yeah, we are about to like round up, and thank you, Adeloa. Thank you to all the attendees that joined from when we started. And this has really been such an insightful conversation. So before we go, and what if you had to sum up AI in healthcare, let's say in one sentence, what would it be? Like if you want to sum up like AI in healthcare, just for like our closing remark.
I'm trying not to sound cool.
Yeah.
Um, well, it's like a new kid on the block,
Okay.
but you have to be wary of the new kid on the block until you know him better, right? So that's the approach everybody's looking at AI in healthcare. At the same time, it's hmm. Well, let me say it's like discovering electricity, right? And I'm saying this because there's about to be a generational shift, similar to the way electricity was discovered. So
Wow.
now you have a lot of organization investing in chips. Recently, there was an announcement by Microsoft, right, of being able to actually, it's basically an advancement in their quantum computer technology. So they were able to make a chip that performs quantum computing operations. And why I'm saying this is because that particular chip that has been created, and they will make several of them, and actually, so what that computer can do right now, right, that particular chip, what you can do right now, if you combine all the chip, both your phone chip, the one in your washing machine, the one in our computer, the ones that are even being used to train an AI, if you
Right.
combine all of them together, right, they cannot actually compute operations as much as it does, right? So what would take trillions and trillions of years for all the combined chips right now to do would actually take that chip to do in minutes, right? So that's one very important. And when we are coming to that particular shift in generation, there are two things. You actually have to catch up or you get dropped um off along the way. So if you don't play catch up, you become you become a third world in technology, right? And I'm saying this from a pain point of where Africans are to the rest of the world, right? So everybody keeps looking at Africa as the person to give the handouts to. And when you get to that point in AI, you become the subject, right? Rather than uh, I'm trying to avoid being so
I,
critical. Um You become the test, yeah, you become the test subject, you become the lab rat, right? So
okay.
something new comes, we give it to you to test. We try it on you first. So if you don't catch up, but if you catch up, then you're able to play in that space of making those decisions
Right.
and not being left out and being tested. So I think that's just the way I would see it in a nutshell. Sorry, it's more than a few words,
Yeah,
but
that's
I
really
kind of read.
solid. I believe like that's really solid. And thank you so much for giving us your time to share your insights. There's been a whole lot of discussions that you talked about and new insights, especially about how data is being used and how not only healthcare professionals and tech professionals can come together, collaborate, and we can start thinking solution oriented. And that's really like a big shift, a big mindset shift. So thank you so much for like taking your time. We really appreciate. And to our audience as well, thank you so much for staying till now. Yeah, I feel that is like all the things that we have in check for today. We are definitely going to have another roundtable next month. This is our first roundtable, and yeah, next month in March we'll also be having another roundtable. So thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, we will have to like round it up here. If you have any final thoughts, so please feel free to like message or email us on LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn is very active. And yes, so that is all we have. So I guess we are just going to